Do you believe that the first vampire in history came from Transylvania? What if I told you that, long before Dracula existed, there was a being even older, darker, and real? Deep in the Irish forests, among forgotten graves and mist-clad hills, an undead known as Abhartach terrorized his people with an insatiable hunger for human blood. This creature did more than emerge only at night. It broke the laws of death, defied kings, and struck fear even into the hearts of druids. A vampire that could only be contained through Celtic magic, iron swords, and mystic stones. Prepare yourself to learn of the vampire that time tried to bury, but which never truly rested. The true story begins now. In medieval Ireland, the worlds of the living and the dead were separated by a thin, almost transparent veil. Legends were not merely tales to scare children. They were truths whispered around fires, ancestral warnings of dangers that defied even death itself. It is in this shrouded setting that the figure of Abhartach emerges, a name few dare utter, even today. Unlike the seductive archetype of the modern vampire, Abhartach was described as a small, deformed, and malevolent man, a local king, tyrant, and master of dark arts. He ruled with an iron fist over a tiny region of Ireland known for its dense woods and funerary mounds. But true terror did not lie in his reign. It lay in what occurred after his death. Legend holds that Abhartach's subjects, weary of his cruelty, conspired to kill him. Some accounts speak of a local hero named Cathain who slew him in battle and buried him by traditional means. Yet the very next morning, the impossible happened. Abhartach returned to life, demanding a bowl of human blood from his subjects to sustain his dark energy. In despair, the people realized that death had not undone him. It had only released him from earthly constraints. The hero killed him again. He buried him once more. And once more, Abhartach rose. Only when he sought the counsel of a druid did Cathain grasp the gravity of his foe. This was no ordinary man. He was a Neam Mairv, an undead sustained by profane forces. To seal him, the warrior would have to slay him with an iron sword, metal detested by supernatural beings, and bury him upside down, in consecrated ground, under a great stone and wrapped in thorn bushes. This account directly mirrors ancient Celtic rituals designed to prevent the dead from returning. Turning the body upside down was not symbolic but practical, believed to confuse the spirit and bar its way back to the realm of the living. Iron, meanwhile, was thought to possess protective properties, a true anathema to creatures of the beyond. The site of his tomb became known as Slack Taverty, or the Giant's Grave, in County Derry. A large stone still covers the spot where Abhartach is said to lie, or at least where they tried to contain him. 18th and 19th century villagers reported dark visions, distant screams, and an oppressive atmosphere upon approaching the mound. Even today, some avoid the place for fear of awakening what slumbers there. What sets Abhartach apart from other figures in Celtic folklore is precisely his cyclical threat that defies natural law. He is neither a restless ghost nor a vengeful spirit. He is a body animated by ancient forces, demanding blood as if it were his new oxygen. He combines elements of necromancy, mythology, and collective terror, and there is nothing romantic about him. At heart, his story echoes humanity's oldest dread, that death is not an end, but a precarious door that can open again if rituals are not followed to the letter. Though shrouded in myth, the figure of Abhartach should not be dismissed as mere folklore. In medieval Ireland, where Christianity and paganism still entwined in an uncertain dance, the rise of a bloodthirsty undead was more than a chilling tale. It reflected a deep-seated fear of unresolved death, restless graves, and pacts with invisible powers. Elsewhere in Europe, vampires were often depicted as sensual, cursed noblemen. Abhartach remained a brutish figure tied to ancient Celtic rites, sacred geography, and necromancy. Ireland's rich oral tradition and close bonds with the spirit world created not just a monster, but a symbol of corrupted power and soul. Abhartach was a king, and his tyranny sprang from something deeper than mere cruelty. Many scholars speculate that he turned to black magic to secure longevity and dominion over his people. Such practices were not unheard of in Celtic traditions, where leaders sought the favor of dark deities or nature spirits in exchange for power. Yet these bargains carried consequences: the violation of life and death's natural cycle. His repeated returns from death, despite multiple burials, are more than frightening. They are symbolic. They represent the inability to bury evil without the proper ritual. Medieval Ireland held the earth itself as a sacred sealing agent. Thus, the tomb at Slataverty became a gateway between the living and the dead. It was not enough to enter the body. One had to seal its essence, for the soul might seep through cracks in the soil if not securely confined. The very presence of the stone at the tomb serves this purpose. Large rocks, known as dolmens or giants' stones, marked the graves of significant or dangerous figures in antiquity. Abhartach fitted both categories. Legend says the stone covering his grave must never be moved. Local tales tell that in the 1990s, a farmer, seeking to clear ground, removed the stone and soon suffered a series of misfortunes: ruined crops, livestock deaths, and inexplicable accidents. Terrified, he replaced the stone, believing he had disturbed something dormant. Such stories are not mere popular legends. They are living manifestations of how the past refuses to fade, of how certain forces resist the passage of time. In this sense, Abhartach is more than a vampire. He is a persistent echo of a world where magic and fear walked hand in hand, where every grave was a threshold between the familiar and the unspeakable. Here we encounter a curious twist: the possibility that Bram Stoker, creator of the famed Dracula, was inspired by this Celtic myth. Stoker was born in Dublin in 1847 and grew up on Irish folklore. Although his novel is set in Transylvania and draws heavily on Eastern European tradition, scholars note disturbing parallels between Dracula and Abhartach, particularly the idea of returning from death, the thirst for blood, and the need for specific rituals to defeat him. The name Dracula, attributed to Prince Vlad Tepes, was a literary invention by Stoker. He never visited Transylvania, which raises an unsettling question. What if the true origin of the modern vampire lies not in the Carpathian forests, but on Ireland's damp hills? The notion that Stoker may have drawn on Abhartach sheds new light on the vampire myth. Instead of a sophisticated Transylvanian noble, the vampire's true ancestor may have been a small Irish tyrant, buried beneath a forgotten stone and wrapped in thorn bushes. His origin is not merely literary, but archaeological, mythical, and cultural. And here the tale grows even more eerie. The Slataverty tomb still stands, and many locals continue to avoid it. They do not call it a king's tomb, but the vampire's grave. Their fear is not purely of ancient tales. It is a living memory, a silent reverence for a place where time seems to hesitate. The mere thought of moving the stone or disturbing the ground sends shivers down the spine of anyone who knows the legend. As if folklore were not enough, there is the weight of collective fear passed down through generations, a form of ancestral memory beyond reason, lodged in the bones. Oral tradition scholars observe that myths surviving centuries carry something more than fantasy. They reflect experiences, ancient traumas, and an intense bond between people and the mysteries that surround them. A historical study of the Abhartak myth reveals parallels with other European accounts of the dead returning for blood. But the difference lies in the details. Abhartak did not dwell in castles or hide behind velvet drapes. He lived among his people as a local ruler, and yet an aberration. That makes the tale all the more disturbing. The monster was one of us. In medieval Irish tradition, there was also the belief that certain soils could refuse death. Ground cursed or tainted by black magic might reject burials, expel the dead, or simply prevent them from resting. Slataverty may have been such a place. This link between earth and death appears again in the requirement to bury Abhartak in consecrated ground, as if the soil itself needed purification to contain what was no longer natural. There are records of other undead in Celtic lore, but Abhartak stands out for his resilience and cunning. He did not act on instinct alone. He demanded blood, orchestrated his own return, and exerted a spiritual dominion over the living. This places him in a different category from simple folkloric zombies. He was a being between worlds, fully aware of his curse and perhaps proud of it. The attempt to end his story with iron, rituals, and heavy stones prompts reflection on an ancient truth. In many cultures, the dead are laid to rest not merely by the absence of life, but by a ceremonial forgetting. It is this ritual remembrance that seals graves. When memory persists, perhaps death is not final. Today, when we think of vampires, we picture beautiful, cursed creatures dwelling in Gothic mansions. But Abhartak reminds us that the original fear was different. It was the fear that evil could not be contained, that power could corrupt so deeply it transcended death itself. He is the dark portrait of soulless immortality, and his legend survives not in books, but in the earth, in the silence of stones and the whisper of Irish trees. Long before Dracula stalked the pages of Victorian literature, a far more ancient and terrifying figure roamed the misty fields of Ireland. Abhartak, the true vampire of history. He did not spring from fiction, but from the genuine dread ancient peoples felt when confronted with the inexplicable, the return of the dead, the insatiable craving for blood, and the failure of sacred rites to preserve order between worlds. His story forces us to rethink the vampire concept, not as a seductive, romantic being, but as a mirror of humanity's most primitive horror. Absolute corruption, tyranny that even death cannot silence. Abhartak symbolizes power that resists destruction, a spirit challenging even ancient gods to persist. Perhaps that is why his legend has endured across centuries, alive in the land that vainly strives to bury him. His presence at the heart of Irish folklore shows how myths do more than enchant. They warn. They carry hidden truths beneath layers of symbolism and fear, revealing the anxieties of entire peoples who sought, in some way, to explain the inexplicable. So next time you hear of vampires, remember, not all don capes and slumber in lavish coffins. Some lie beneath forgotten stones, surrounded by thorns, waiting for someone foolish enough to awaken them. If this tale has piqued your curiosity, share in the comments what else you know about medieval mysteries and creatures. What other ancient secrets deserve to be unearthed? See you soon. Until our next journey.